The Grand Canyon's ancient walls have witnessed countless tragedies, but some deaths stand apart, not for their inevitability, but for their shocking preventability. These are the stories of visitors whose fatal decisions defied every warning and transformed America's most majestic landmark into their final resting place. It was June 22, 2018, at Lipin Point on the south rim of the Grand Canyon. Late afternoon temperatures exceeded 95 degrees Fahrenheit as steady winds pushed heat across the overlook. Sun-baked stone radiated stored heat, creating an oven-like environment along the exposed rim. 30-year-old Stella Young had arrived with friends to capture sunset photographs at the scenic viewpoint. Working as a freelance graphic designer, she often sought dramatic lighting and unique angles for her creative projects. Friends later stated that Stella often became careless with equipment when focused on getting the perfect shot. She had brought along several photography props, including a small handheld butane torch used for creating dramatic lighting effects. The overlook featured warning signs that specifically prohibited open flames near the dry vegetation and cliff edges. The combination of extreme heat, low humidity, and constant wind created ideal conditions for rapid fire spread. Park regulations strictly forbade any type of open flame or ignition source in the area. Multiple warning signs were posted throughout the overlook, explicitly banning open flames, ignition devices, and fuel use due to wildfire risk. Several visitors later stated that Stella was verbally warned that flames were prohibited in the area. Despite those warnings, she chose to proceed with her setup. Stella continued arranging her shots and used a butane torch to create lighting effects. She carried the torch along with a pocket-sized butane refill canister in her jacket pocket. The torch had been used earlier in the day and remained warm from recent operation and prolonged exposure to the extreme heat. As the afternoon progressed, the sun-exposed rock surfaces continued to radiate stored heat, creating surface temperatures that exceeded 100 degrees. The steady wind pushed this superheated air across the overlook, creating an environment where any flammable materials would ignite rapidly. Stella attempted to refill the torch while it was still warm from recent use, not allowing adequate cooling time. She set both the torch and refill canister on the sun-heated stone surface while preparing for the refueling, allowing the metal canister to absorb additional heat from the superheated rock. The combination of the heated torch housing, the warming fuel canister, and the extreme ambient temperature created dangerous conditions for handling pressurized butane fuel. As she attempted to connect the refill canister to the torch, pressurized butane began escaping improperly from the connection point. The volatile fuel immediately vaporized in the extreme heat, forming a concentrated vapor cloud around her hands and upper body. The invisible gas cloud expanded rapidly in the hot, moving air, creating a highly combustible mixture. When Stella triggered the torch ignition mechanism, the accumulated butane vapor ignited instantly in a flash fire. The sudden combustion created a brief but intense fireball that engulfed her head, neck, and upper torso. The extreme heat caused the pressurized refill canister to fail, releasing fuel in a violent flare that intensified the fire and knocked her backward onto the rocky surface. The flash fire and canister failure caused severe thermal burns to her head, neck, and upper body. Witnesses reported that she collapsed moments after the ignition and did not respond to attempts to assist her. Emergency responders later determined that she died from complications related to extensive burn injuries and inhalation damage. Nearby visitors witnessed the sudden fireball and immediately called for emergency response while attempting to provide assistance. The brief fire extinguished quickly, but the damage from the initial flash ignition and rapid fuel release had already caused catastrophic injuries. Park rangers and emergency medical personnel arrived within 20 minutes. When they reached Stella, they found extensive burn injuries consistent with a butane vapor ignition and pressurized container failure. The torch and ruptured fuel canister were recovered as evidence. Fire investigators determined that the ignition was preventable, caused by improper handling of pressurized butane fuel and the use of an open flame in a restricted area. The official report noted that the torch was refilled while still warm in extreme heat, allowing fuel vapor to accumulate before igniting. Investigators concluded that the incident would not have occurred if park regulations had been followed, but Stella wasn't the only one whose disregard for posted warnings proved fatal that summer. A year earlier, At a desert campground, a handyman's dismissive attitude toward safety advisories was already setting the stage for another deadly encounter with Arizona's hidden dangers. It was July 3, 2017, at Desert View Campground on the eastern rim of the Grand Canyon. Nighttime temperatures hovered around 75 degrees Fahrenheit as a light breeze moved through juniper and sagebrush. Campfire smoke drifted across the campsites under a clear, star-filled Arizona sky. Hardy Vorn, 41, had set up his campsite near a shallow rocky wash along the eastern edge of Desert View Campground. A self-employed handyman from Phoenix, he placed greater trust in practical experience than formal safety advice. Family members later stated that he had complained of intermittent breathing problems in the past, but had never sought medical evaluation. Friends and co-workers described him as someone who routinely dismissed posted warnings. He had traveled to the canyon with his 9-year-old son for a long holiday weekend, planning to sightsee the following morning. Throughout the campground, notices warned visitors about venomous desert wildlife, including Arizona bark scorpions, which are most active after dark. Rangers routinely reminded campers to wear closed-toe shoes at night and to avoid handling firewood, rocks, or equipment without checking underneath. Bark scorpions commonly shelter beneath bark and debris during the day, emerging after sunset as temperatures drop. As evening progressed, Hardy decided to gather additional firewood from the nearby wash. Without gloves, he moved fallen branches and lifted pieces of deadwood scattered among the rocks. His son remained at the picnic table nearby, watching as Hardy sorted through bark-covered logs illuminated by lantern light. When Hardy lifted a section of loose bark, a small, pale yellow scorpion dropped onto the sandy ground below. Witnesses later stated that he drew attention to it and dismissed the posted warnings, treating the animal as harmless despite signage throughout the campground. To demonstrate his point, Hardy crouched down and extended his bare hand toward the scorpion. The animal attempted to move away, but Hardy persisted, positioning his palm in its path. After several seconds, the scorpion crawled onto his hand. For nearly a minute, Hardy held the scorpion in his hand, maintaining control of it despite visible signs of distress from the animal. Without further provocation, the scorpion struck. Its stinger pierced the skin of Hardy's index finger, injecting venom directly into the tissue. Hardy immediately shook his hand and dropped the animal, dismissing the sting as minor. But within minutes, intense pain radiated up his arm. His fingers began to cramp, followed by uncontrollable muscle spasms that spread through his forearm and shoulder. Medical examiners later noted that the venom caused severe neurological disruption consistent with bark scorpion envenomation. His facial muscles twitched erratically, his eyes darted involuntarily, and his limbs jerked in sharp, uncoordinated movements. Campers nearby noticed that he had become extremely sensitive to touch, recoiling even as others tried to steady him. Excessive saliva began pooling in his mouth as the muscles controlling his jaw and throat spasmed unpredictably. Hardy struggled to clear his airway or speak clearly. His breathing became irregular as he lost control of the muscles needed to protect it. Within minutes, he became disoriented and collapsed to the ground, gasping as his breathing became increasingly ineffective. Nearby campers immediately contacted emergency services and moved Hardy's son away from the scene. Park rangers arrived approximately 35 minutes later, delayed by limited nighttime access and distance from the nearest staffed ranger station. Emergency medical personnel followed after additional coordination. Despite attempts to stabilize him, Hardy was unresponsive upon their arrival. The official investigation later determined that Hardy died from respiratory failure caused by neurotoxic scorpion envenomation, compounded by an undiagnosed respiratory condition and delayed emergency treatment. Medical examiners noted that while Arizona bark scorpion stings are rarely fatal in healthy adults, intentionally handling the animal delayed effective intervention and increased the risk of severe neurological complications. The campground reopened later that night following routine documentation. Investigators concluded that the outcome would likely have been avoided if the animal had not been intentionally handled and emergency care had been reached sooner. But Hardy wasn't the only one whose overconfidence led to tragedy that summer. At a popular overlook along the South Rim, a college student's desire for the perfect social media moment was already drawing him dangerously close to the canyon's edge. It was September 9th, 2018, and Moran Point stretched along the south rim of the Grand Canyon under a clear afternoon sky. The overlook offered sweeping views across the canyon, with a steady breeze and temperatures in the mid-70s. 22-year-old Zancy Flitt had arrived with a group of college friends during their weekend road trip from California. A community college student, Zancy was known for his thrill-seeking behavior and constant need for attention. He regularly posted dramatic photos and videos on social media, always looking for content that would generate likes and comments. The overlook was marked by a low stone wall and informal rock boundaries indicating safe viewing areas. Beyond them, the ground sloped toward a sheer drop, with warning signs advising visitors to stay behind designated boundaries due to unstable footing. Zancy had been taking standard tourist photos when he noticed the dramatic backdrop available just beyond the informal rock boundary. The smooth limestone surface extended several feet past the safety markers, offering what appeared to be the perfect platform for a more adventurous shot. His friends had their phones ready to record as he positioned himself to perform a plank pose near the canyon edge. Intermittent wind gusts moved across the overlook throughout the afternoon, and the smooth rock surface near the rim sloped subtly toward the canyon, a grade easy to miss while focused elsewhere. Despite posted warnings and his friends' mild protests, Zancy stepped over the rock boundary and moved toward the canyon edge. He tested the surface with his feet, finding it solid and stable. The limestone felt secure beneath his sneakers, and the wind seemed manageable. His friends positioned themselves to capture the stunt from multiple angles. Zancy lowered himself into position, supporting his body weight on his hands and forearms in a standard plank pose. For the first few seconds, he maintained steady form while his friends recorded. The wind remained relatively calm as he supported his weight on the sloped rock surface beneath him. As another gust moved across the overlook, conditions already present throughout the afternoon, his palms slid on the dust-polished rock surface, the force pushing against his back and shoulders as his grip failed simultaneously. He attempted to compensate by pressing harder against the rock with his palms, but the smooth surface provided insufficient friction. His palms continued sliding forward on the stone, causing his chest to drop toward the rock lip. The change in position lifted his legs off the ground, rotating his entire body over the edge. Unable to regain his grip or reverse his momentum, Zancy went over the precipice. The fall carried him approximately 300 feet down the canyon face, with his body striking multiple rock ledges during the descent. Each impact caused severe blunt force trauma to his head, torso, and limbs. The repeated collisions resulted in fatal injuries during the descent, before his body came to rest on a narrow ledge far below. His friends immediately stopped recording and alerted park rangers through emergency communication systems. Other visitors witnessed the fall and provided additional witness accounts to responding personnel. The overlook was temporarily closed to allow emergency crews to begin recovery operations. Rangers trained in technical rescue operations were dispatched to the scene, but the remote location made immediate recovery impossible. Helicopter support was requested to access the narrow ledge where his body had come to rest. Recovery operations took several hours due to the challenging terrain. When rescue personnel reached Zancy, they confirmed he had died from massive blunt force trauma sustained during the fall. His body was recovered and transported to the rim, where it was released to the county coroner. Park investigators documented the incident as an accidental fall that occurred after the victim intentionally crossed designated safety boundaries to perform a stunt near the canyon edge. The official report noted that wind conditions, combined with the sloped rock surface and inadequate hand grip, had contributed to the victim losing control. We've got more disturbing Grand Canyon tragedies coming up, so hit that subscribe button if you want to see how reckless choices in one of the world's most famous landmarks can turn deadly in seconds. It was August 2nd, 2015, and the Bright Angel Trail descended into the Grand Canyon under a scorching Arizona sun. The popular hiking route zigzagged down the south wall of the canyon through steep switchbacks, facing north into the inner gorge, with temperatures already climbing past 100 degrees by mid-morning. An active heat advisory had been issued for the region, with meteorologists warning that exposed areas could reach dangerous levels exceeding 105 degrees. 34-year-old Sela Gobb arrived at the trailhead alone, planning what she believed was a manageable day hike to the 3-mile rest house. She had researched the trail distance in advance, but ignored the extreme heat forecast for that day, focusing on mileage rather than conditions. That decision left her unprepared for the environment she was about to enter. Park rangers had positioned themselves at the trailhead since early morning, actively advising hikers to turn back due to the dangerous temperature conditions, warnings Sella heard before starting her descent. Posted warnings throughout the area emphasized the critical importance of carrying adequate water, with recommendations of 1 gallon per person for summer hiking. The trail's exposed sections offered no natural shade. Sella had gathered her hiking gear, which consisted of a small day pack, her camera, and snacks for the trail. In her focus on organizing her route and timing, she had left her water bottle sitting in the car's cup holder. She realized the oversight only after beginning her descent, but chose not to turn back, believing she could reach the first rest station despite the heat. The initial section of trail wound through relatively shaded areas near the rim where temperatures remained in the upper 90s. Sella maintained a steady pace, feeling confident about her fitness level. However, as the trail descended deeper into the canyon, the protective shade disappeared, and she found herself hiking across fully exposed switchbacks where the sun's intensity was amplified by reflection off the surrounding rock walls. By the time she had descended below the first major rest point, the ambient temperature had climbed past 105 degrees. The trail surface itself radiated additional heat, creating an oven-like environment where signs of heat-related distress became increasingly apparent. Without water to replace fluids lost through perspiration, her body began showing early signs of heat-related stress. Sella's movement gradually became slower and less coordinated as she continued down the exposed switchbacks. Her skin grew hot and dry as her body's cooling mechanisms became overwhelmed. Witnesses later reported that her balance deteriorated and her movements became increasingly uncoordinated, but she continued hiking rather than turning back toward the cooler rim areas. Witnesses later reported that she passed the 3-mile rest house without stopping, despite showing visible signs of distress. On a steep section of trail just beyond the rest station, Sella's condition deteriorated rapidly. Witnesses reported seeing her moving unsteadily before she collapsed onto the trail surface. Her skin appeared flushed and dry, signs consistent with advanced heat stroke. As she attempted to rise, she lost her balance and collapsed beside the maintained path, striking her head as she fell. Her head struck the compacted stone surface with significant force, causing a severe head injury that rendered her unconscious. The combination of severe dehydration, heat stroke, and traumatic head injury created a medical emergency that would have required immediate intervention to survive. Passing hikers discovered Sella within minutes and immediately contacted park rangers. The witnesses attempted to provide basic first aid while waiting for medical response. Emergency personnel reached the scene within 45 minutes, but Sella was already unresponsive. She was pronounced dead at the scene. The medical examiner later determined that she died from complications related to heat exposure, dehydration, and blunt force head trauma sustained during her fall. Park investigators documented the incident as a heat-related death with secondary trauma from an uncontrolled fall. The official report noted that the victim had been hiking without water during an active heat advisory, and that dehydration and heat stroke had contributed to her collapse and subsequent fatal head injury. But Sella wasn't the only one whose disregard for safety warnings proved fatal that summer. A year earlier on the Colorado River, a recent graduate's pursuit of the perfect shot was already drawing him dangerously close to one of the canyon's most treacherous rapids. It was June 18, 2017, near Lava Falls Rapid on the Colorado River in the Grand Canyon. Spring snowmelt had pushed water levels high, turning the Class 5 rapid fast and unpredictable. Powerful waves and violent hydraulics churned through the narrow channel. 27-year-old Connor Reed had joined a commercial rafting expedition with a small group of friends eager to tackle the challenging rapids. A recent college graduate working in entry-level office positions, Connor was physically fit but had limited experience with serious whitewater. He was known among his friends as someone who sought excitement and often pushed boundaries to capture memorable experiences for social media. The guided trip included a mix of novice and experienced rafters, with professional guides stationed at both ends of the main raft and in accompanying safety rafts. Before entering the rapid, the guides had conducted detailed safety briefings about proper positioning, the importance of maintaining secure handholds, and the specific dangers posed by Class 5 rapids. They emphasized that passengers should remain seated and keep both hands on safety ropes. Connor positioned himself at the very front of the raft, a location identified during the safety briefing as higher risk. He carried a camera rig that included a small tripod strapped to his chest for hands-free filming, along with a waterproof backpack. The guides had specifically instructed all passengers to secure loose gear and maintain proper grip on safety lines. As the raft approached lava falls, the guides shouted final instructions over the roar of the churning water. The rapid ahead featured massive standing waves, followed by a dangerous hydraulic at the base, where water dropped over a ledge and circulated back upstream. This hydraulic was capable of trapping and repeatedly tumbling anything that fell into its circulation pattern. Connor leaned forward over the bow to film the approaching rapid, extending his camera to capture the dramatic footage he wanted. In his excitement to document the experience, he failed to maintain his grip on the safety ropes as instructed. The camera rig strapped to his chest and the backpack created additional bulk that affected his balance. The raft hit the first major wave with tremendous force, launching a wall of water over the bow. The impact threw Connor off balance, and without secure handholds, he was unable to brace against the violent motion. He tumbled forward over the front of the raft and into the churning water just as the raft entered the most dangerous section. The powerful current immediately swept Connor toward the hydraulic at the base of the rapid. His life vest kept him buoyant, but the straps from his camera equipment and backpack complicated his movement as he was pulled underwater by the circulating current. The hydraulic's recirculating flow repeatedly pushed him down and tumbled him underwater, preventing him from reaching the surface. Guides in the main raft and accompanying safety rafts immediately initiated rescue procedures, but the violent water conditions and Connor's position in the hydraulic made immediate extraction extremely difficult. The safety rafts had to navigate carefully to avoid being caught in the same hydraulic. After several minutes of being repeatedly cycled through the hydraulic circulation pattern, Connor's struggles became less coordinated. The combination of exhaustion from fighting the current, repeated submersion, and restricted movement caused his struggles to become increasingly weak and uncoordinated. Rescue teams finally managed to extract Connor from the hydraulic and pull him into a safety raft approximately 6 minutes after he had initially fallen overboard. Despite immediate attempts at resuscitation, he was unresponsive and showed no signs of breathing. Emergency medical personnel were contacted via satellite communication, but the remote location required helicopter evacuation. Connor was later pronounced dead. The medical examiner determined that the cause of death was drowning due to prolonged submersion and exhaustion in the hydraulic circulation pattern. The official investigation documented the incident as an accidental drowning caused by failure to follow safety instructions and improper positioning in the raft. Investigators noted that the victim's camera equipment had become entangled during his time in the water, contributing to his inability to surface effectively. Thanks for watching. Want to see more? Click on your screen now.